Beyond the Gates spoilers for Tuesday, August 19th tease that Leslie has put aside the lingering pain of being abandoned to enjoy the euphoria of her fortune now within her grasp. Money has always glittered before her eyes like an illusion, something that was always out there, never hers. And now, suddenly, the inheritance Barbara left her makes her feel like fate has finally turned in her favor. She smiles a little too loudly, a little too widely, but underneath that joy lies the lingering pain of a woman who grew up rejected. For Leslie, money has become a shield, a way to silence the voices of doubt and resentment that have whispered over the years. The journey begins when she makes her way to Vernon's house, carrying both excitement and the heavy burden of revelation. Vernon, the man whose name echoes through fragments of her mother's letters, has no idea that the past he thought was buried is about to break through the surface. Leslie rehearses her lines in her head before knocking, determined to make her story sound less like desperation and more like undeniable fact. Yet the minute Anita appears in the doorway, suspicion radiating from her sharp gaze, Leslie feels the old bitterness rising in her throat. Anita does not believe her, not for a second. To Anita, the idea that Barbara, once so tangled in their lives, had left behind a child is absurd and, worse, insulting. The tension thickens as Leslie pulls out the faded letters, each page weathered by time but still marked with Barbara's distinctive handwriting. She lays them on the table like cards in a high-stakes game, her proof against disbelief. Vernon studies the words, his hands trembling ever so slightly, while Anita hovers nearby with her arms crossed, unwilling to let her guard down. For Leslie, these letters are not just scraps of paper. They are weapons, relics of truth that cannot be denied. Yet, even armed with this evidence, she cannot resist lacing her words with venom, mocking Anita with barbs that cut deep. She savors the way Anita's jaw clenches tighter with each insult, almost daring her to explode. And explode Anita does. The slap comes sharp and fast, a crack that slices through the air before Leslie can react. For a moment, time freezes. Leslie's cheek burns, her pride stings sharper than her skin, but her smirk does not fade. Anita, panting from the surge of rage, sees that smirk as the final insult, proof that Leslie will never back down. It is a brutal initiation, a raw reminder that this household, no matter what the letters say, does not welcome her. Vernon stands caught between them, his voice tangled in hesitation. His heart pounds against the wall of his chest as the truth he never anticipated begins to settle in. Barbara, pregnant, with his child. The possibility crashes into him with such force that he nearly staggers back. How could he have missed it? How could Barbara have carried such a secret without a single word, a single hint? His thoughts blur between guilt, confusion, and a surge of unwanted hope, the hope that maybe Leslie really is his daughter, that maybe something lost could still be salvaged. But Anita will not allow him to linger in that hope. She turns on him, her voice sharp and raw, demanding that he throw Leslie out. To Anita, this revelation is not a miracle, but a betrayal. It threatens the foundation of everything she thought she knew about Vernon, about their shared history. She does not care if the letters are real. She cares only that Leslie's presence twists the knife in old wounds. Vernon tries to calm her, to soothe her fury, but his words falter. The weight of the moment is too heavy, the air too thick with accusation. He takes a gentler tone with Leslie, telling her to come back another day, when tempers are cooler, when they can sit and talk without fists or insults. But Leslie hears the dismissal in his voice more than the invitation. To her, it is rejection all over again. Her jaw tightens, her eyes flash, and before she storms out, she throws one last insult at Anita, a parting shot meant to wound. The door slams, the echoes lingering like the aftermath of a storm. Vernon sinks into his chair, his hands covering his face, feeling the crushing guilt of a man caught between two worlds. Leslie's words haunt him, reminding him of what Barbara once meant to him, of what he may have lost without ever realizing it. He cannot shake the thought that his own negligence, his own blindness, played a role in Leslie's suffering. Anita, meanwhile, seethes in silence, her anger turning inward and outward at once. When she finally speaks, it is not with comfort, but with confrontation. She wants answers about Barbara, about the nights Vernon never explained, about the secrets that are only now unraveling. Their argument spirals, each sentence sharper than the last, until Vernon cuts it short. He tells her they must stop, that if they continue, their words will only grow uglier. Yet the silence that follows is not peace, it is the brittle quiet of two people standing on the edge of something they cannot name. Meanwhile, beyond their household, another life struggles in the shadows. Ted, already burdened by his own troubles, reaches out for help. He turns to Anita and Vernon, hoping for guidance, for stability, for the support he so desperately needs. But he finds them drowning in their own turmoil, unable to lend him even a fragment of attention. Ted's pleas hang unanswered, his loneliness magnified by their chaos. He watches Vernon's despair deepen, sees the man unravel under the crushing weight of revelations and regrets. This is the moment Vernon begins to spiral into despair. For all his years of control, of maintaining a steady hand in the face of conflict, he now finds himself adrift. Barbara's secret gnaws at him. Was this her revenge? Did she carry Leslie in silence as a way to punish him, to punish Anita? And why leave Leslie in the care of Peaches, of all people? The questions twist in his mind, each one a barb that digs deeper into his conscience. He remembers Barbara as both a presence and a ghost, a woman whose laughter could fill a room, but whose silences were darker than night. To think that she bore his child and never told him feels like both betrayal and tragedy. Was she protecting him, or was she damning him? Did she want him to know, or was secrecy her final weapon? Vernon has no answers, only the hollow ache of a man facing a past he never chose, but must now confront. Leslie, meanwhile, retreats into her own world of fury and determination. The sting of Anita's slap lingers on her cheek, but it only fuels her resolve. She refuses to let anyone dismiss her, not now, not when she finally holds power in her hands. She clings to Barbara's letters like sacred scripture, believing that they will force Vernon to face the truth, believing that she will not be erased again. Every insult, every rejection, only hardens her heart. For Anita, the confrontation leaves her restless, unable to shake the image of Leslie's defiant eyes. She feels cornered, threatened not just by the idea of Leslie herself, but by what Leslie represents, the ghost of Barbara, the shadow of choices long buried. Anita tells herself she is protecting Vernon, protecting their life together, but deep down, she fears the cracks that Leslie has exposed. The days that follow are thick with unease. Vernon avoids long conversations with Anita, retreating instead into silence and contemplation. He finds himself staring at Barbara's old photographs, at the letters Leslie left behind, searching for meaning in the ink. Anita, frustrated by his withdrawal, begins to resent Leslie even more, blaming her for the widening rift in their home. Ted, still desperate for guidance, drifts further into isolation, his quiet pleas for help swallowed by the louder storm around him. Every thread begins to intertwine, Leslie's hunger for recognition, Anita's need for control, Vernon's battle with guilt, Ted's silent suffering. Each of them is pulled into the orbit of Barbara's absence, as if her ghost has risen to remind them that the past cannot be buried so easily. And though none of them will admit it, they are all waiting for the next confrontation, the next eruption of truth and anger that will shatter what little balance they have left. The silence in Vernon's house stretches for days, heavy enough to press on everyone's chest. Anita moves through the rooms with sharp movements, slamming cupboard doors, clattering plates, her anger disguised as efficiency. Vernon watches her, knowing that beneath the noise lies fear of losing him, fear of facing the truth about Barbara, and fear of what Leslie's sudden intrusion could mean for their future. But instead of soothing her, his guilt drives him further inward. He avoids her gaze, avoids her questions, avoids the raw wound that both of them keep reopening without meaning to. Leslie, meanwhile, carries her bruised pride like a badge. She tells herself she does not need their approval, that the inheritance alone will silence anyone who doubts her. Yet late at night, when her reflection stares back from the mirror, she cannot escape the feeling of unfinished business. The slap Anita delivered was more than physical. It was a reminder that she still has no place, no acknowledgement, no closure. Leslie convinces herself that her return is inevitable. She will make them see. She will force them to recognize her not only as Barbara's daughter, but as Vernon's blood. The more they resist, the more determined she becomes. Ted senses all of this tension but feels powerless to intervene. His own problems weigh heavily on him, yet he recognizes the fracture widening between Vernon and Anita. He hovers on the edges of their conflict, wanting to reach out but afraid of being pulled into a battle that does not belong to him. Still, he cannot help but notice how Vernon's shoulders slump further each day, how Anita's temper grows shorter, how the house itself seems to shrink beneath the pressure. The next time Leslie returns, she does not come timidly. She arrives with an air of defiance, her chin lifted, her eyes sharp with challenge. She knows Anita will never welcome her, but Vernon is the weak point. She has seen the way his expression falters, the way his silence betrays his guilt. She believes she can bend him to her side if she pushes hard enough. And so, when the door opens, she wastes no time with pleasantries. She steps inside, uninvited, carrying Barbara's letters once again, daring Anita to stop her. The confrontation reignites immediately. Anita demands she leave, her voice trembling with fury. Vernon, torn once more, hesitates. Leslie seizes the pause, thrusting the letters toward him again, recounting Barbara's words, recounting her abandonment, recounting the years of silence that shaped her life. She sharpens her story into a blade, cutting through Vernon's defenses with accusations of neglect and betrayal. Anita lashes back, accusing Leslie of manipulation, of twisting the truth for personal gain. But Vernon cannot ignore the echo of Barbara in Leslie's tone, the resemblance in her eyes, the undeniable connection that keeps tugging at him despite every reason to resist. The argument escalates until Vernon finally raises his voice, demanding an end to the shouting. For a brief moment, silence returns. He looks at Anita, then at Leslie, then at the letters spread before him like a map of mistakes. He admits what he never thought he would, that he believes Leslie may indeed be his daughter. The words hang in the air like thunder, shattering Anita's defenses. She stares at him, betrayed, her heart twisting with both rage and heartbreak. For her, this is not merely about Barbara or Leslie, it is about Vernon choosing someone else, about him letting the shadow of another woman dismantle the life they built. Leslie seizes the moment, pressing further, pushing Vernon to acknowledge her publicly, to claim her openly. But Vernon hesitates. His belief is tempered by confusion, by the years lost, by the uncertainty of Barbara's motives. Was Leslie brought up by Peaches as an act of love, or as a calculated move by Barbara to spite Anita? Did Barbara want Vernon to find out, or was Leslie never meant to step into this house at all? These questions coil around him, leaving him unable to act decisively. Anita cannot bear it. Her fury ignites once more, and this time her anger turns not just on Leslie, but on Vernon himself. She demands answers he cannot give, demands loyalty he cannot promise. Their shouting rattles the walls, leaving Leslie to watch with a mixture of triumph and discomfort. She wanted to expose the truth, yes, but she did not expect it to dismantle their relationship so quickly, so violently. She realizes, perhaps for the first time, that her fight for recognition is not only about her, it is about tearing open wounds that may never heal. Ted, drawn into the chaos despite his reluctance, finally speaks. His words are softer than theirs, less sharp, but they cut in their own way. He reminds Vernon that despair will consume him if he does not act, that silence and hesitation will destroy more than the truth ever could. Ted pleads with Anita to see beyond her anger, to recognize the weight Vernon is carrying. Yet his attempts to mediate fall short. Neither Vernon nor Anita can hear him over the roar of their emotions. Days pass, but the damage lingers. Anita begins to withdraw, retreating into icy silence rather than fiery confrontation. Leslie, unsatisfied, plans her next move carefully, convinced that persistence will wear Vernon down. And Vernon himself sinks deeper into despair, haunted by Barbara's ghost, by the choices he did not make, by the daughter he may never truly know. The spiral tightens further when whispers begin to circulate. Rumors about Leslie's claim, about Barbara's past, about the fragile state of Vernon's household. Whether true or not, these whispers fuel Anita's paranoia and strengthen Leslie's resolve. Vernon finds himself at the center of a storm, his reputation, his family, and his peace of mind unraveling all at once. It is Ted who begins to see the danger most clearly. He recognizes that Vernon is nearing a breaking point, that Anita's anger and Leslie's ambition are pushing him toward collapse. Ted wrestles with his own problems but knows he cannot stand by and watch Vernon shatter. Yet, even as he considers stepping in more forcefully, he fears what might happen if the truth is forced too quickly, if the wounds are pressed too hard. As the story pushes forward, the stakes rise with every confrontation. Leslie grows more relentless, Anita more desperate, Vernon more broken, and Ted more entangled. Barbara's absence becomes more present than ever, her secrets casting shadows across every word, every glance, every silence. What began as a revelation of hidden letters transforms into a battle for identity, loyalty, and survival within a family that may never truly accept one another. The final reckoning looms closer. Each character senses it, even if they cannot name it. Anita knows that one more betrayal could end everything. Leslie knows that only by pressing harder can she secure her place. Vernon knows that indecision will destroy him faster than the truth. Ted knows that silence is no longer an option. And in the spaces between their choices, the question of Barbara's intentions lingers like a curse. Was her secret meant to heal, or was it meant to ruin them all? The answer lies just beyond their reach, waiting to reveal itself in the final clash that none of them can avoid. The unraveling of truth finally brings each of them to a point where avoidance is no longer possible. Vernon wakes one morning with a decision gnawing at him. He must face Leslie again, not as a nuisance, not as a disruption, but as a possible daughter whose existence demands recognition. He cannot bear the silence any longer, nor the way Anita's coldness has carved distance between them. He seeks her out in the kitchen, but when he tries to speak, Anita's stare stops him. Her eyes are rimmed with sleeplessness, her lips pressed tight. She does not want explanations anymore, she wants him to choose. The ultimatum comes without flourish. Anita tells him that if Leslie stays in their lives, she will not. Her voice shakes as she says it, but her resolve is iron. She refuses to live beneath Barbara's shadow again, refuses to share her home with the living reminder of betrayal. Vernon hears the words and feels the ground shift beneath him. For a man who built his life on steadiness, the choice now feels impossible. Blood versus loyalty, past versus present, guilt versus love. Leslie arrives that same day, as if summoned by the ultimatum itself. She walks in with determination, no longer tentative, no longer questioning. She has waited too long to be denied, and she refuses to leave without the acknowledgement she has sought since the beginning. Anita confronts her at once, their voices clashing like steel on steel. But this time Vernon does not stand silently between them. He raises his hand, silencing both, and for the first time since the revelations began, he speaks with clarity. He tells Leslie that he believes her, that the letters are proof enough for him, that Barbara's secret is too carefully preserved to be a fabrication. He admits the guilt that has been eating at him, the grief that Barbara never trusted him enough to tell him, the shame of realizing that his daughter grew up believing she was unwanted. Leslie's eyes shine, not with triumph but with something far more fragile, the longing of a child who has finally been seen. For once, her sharp tongue stills, her insult swallowed by the enormity of the moment. But even as Leslie's heart begins to soften, Anita's fury erupts. She cannot watch the man she loves embrace the daughter of another woman, not without breaking. She accuses him of betraying her, of choosing Barbara's memory over the years they've shared. Her anger is laced with desperation, her voice cracking with heartbreak. And for a moment Vernon nearly falters, torn between the past that shaped him and the woman who has stood beside him. Ted, who has been lingering in the background, finally steps forward. He speaks with urgency, his words trembling but resolute. He tells Anita that this is not a betrayal but a reckoning. He reminds her that denying Leslie will not erase Barbara, will not erase the truth, will not erase the wound that already festers between them. He pleads with her to see that Vernon is not choosing Barbara over her, but choosing to make peace with the ghost that has haunted them all. His voice, quieter but steadier than the storm, cuts through the room. Anita, for the first time, does not lash back. She stares at Vernon, then at Leslie, then at Ted, and the silence stretches. Tears well in her eyes, but do not fall. She turns away, retreating to the far side of the room, as though distance will protect her from collapse. Her silence is not acceptance, but it is not rejection either. It is the space of a woman deciding whether to fight harder or finally let go. Vernon steps toward Leslie. He does not embrace her, he cannot yet, but he places a hand on her shoulder, tentative, trembling. He tells her that he cannot undo the years lost, cannot give back the childhood stolen, but he can try to begin again. He asks for time, for patience, for a chance to learn how to be what she needs. Leslie nods, her throat tight, words failing her for perhaps the first time in her life. The ending does not come with neat resolution, but with fragile threads of possibility. Anita leaves the room, her footsteps heavy, her silence louder than any argument. Vernon watches her go, uncertain whether she will return to his side or walk away forever. Ted lingers nearby, relieved that truth has finally been spoken, but wary of the fractures that remain. And Leslie, standing at the center of it all, realizes that recognition is not the same as belonging. She has forced open the gates of the past, but stepping through them will take more than proof, more than inheritance, more than anger. In the quiet that follows, each of them is left with a choice. Vernon must decide whether he can mend both his bond with Anita and his bond with Leslie, or whether one must be sacrificed for the other. Anita must decide whether her love can withstand the shadow of Barbara, or whether the wound is too deep to heal. Leslie must decide whether her hunger for acknowledgement will finally give way to the harder work of reconciliation. And Ted, ever the overlooked one, must decide whether he can keep carrying the weight of others or finally tend to his own burdens. The story closes not with finality but with the image of Vernon standing in the doorway, watching Anita retreat and Leslie remain, knowing that the path ahead is uncertain, but also knowing that the gates of the past have been opened, and there is no closing them again.